She thought she was just an ordinary Australian woman, a wife, a mother, a life built on simple truths. But inside a quiet passport office, under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights, one routine question changed everything. Where were you born? In that moment, the ground beneath Susan Gervaise's life collapsed, and she discovered her entire identity was a lie. Under the cold fluorescent lights of that office, the foundation of Susan's life began to crumble. Within days, the truth unraveled, a truth she could never have imagined. She was not who she thought she was. She wasn't even Australian. She was a missing child, stolen more than 50 years earlier from her real home in England. Somewhere thousands of miles away, brothers and sisters had spent a lifetime searching for her. This wasn't a story of strangers in masks or a child snatched in the night. It was something far stranger. A little girl taken in plain sight with her parents' permission, and a deception that would last decades. A promise made in 1969 that tore an entire family apart. That summer in England should have been like any other for 4-year-old Susan. Her world was small but safe. The narrow, cobbled streets of Pontefract, the warmth of her busy but loving mother Jean, and the constant presence of her brothers and sisters. Life wasn't always easy. Her mother struggled with illness, and the family lived on a traveler site where money was tight. They didn't have much, but there was love, there was warmth, and there was a sense of belonging. For a child, that was enough. It was through that circle of trust that Susan's life would change forever. One day, a friendly couple from a traveler family, people her parents knew well, came to visit. They were warm, charming, the kind of people who could put anyone at ease. They made an offer that seemed like a blessing. "We're going on holiday," they said. "Why don't we take Susan with us? We'll show her the countryside, the beaches, even Disneyland in America. She'll have fun. We'll treat her like our own." For Susan's mother, Jean, who was struggling with multiple sclerosis and had limited means, the idea felt like a gift. And these weren't strangers. They were trusted friends from the same traveler community. So, with trust in her heart, she handed over her little girl's birth certificate so the couple could add her to their passport. She packed Susan's small bag, kissed her goodbye, and waved her off, expecting her daughter to return in a week or two with stories of adventure. But Susan never came home. The promised holiday was a lie. Instead of taking her to Scotland for a short trip, or even on a holiday to America, the couple spirited her out of the UK entirely. First to Canada, then across the world to Australia, and eventually New Zealand. Along the way, they gave her a new name, a new birthday, and a new identity, erasing every trace of who she really was. Back in England, Jean was frantic. She begged the police for help. But in that era, with limited communication between countries and no global systems to track missing children, the trail quickly went cold. Weeks became months. Months became years. Jean grew weaker as her illness advanced. She clung to hope, but hope can only carry so much weight. Before long, Susan's mother passed away without ever knowing what had happened to her little girl. For her siblings, the loss was unbearable. A sister gone, a mother grieving, a family shattered. Yet even in grief, they never stopped hoping that one day Susan might be found. They kept her memory alive in stories, in fading photographs, and in whispered prayers that one day a miracle would return her to them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Susan was growing up under the shadow of a devastating lie. Whenever she asked about her parents, she was told the same cruel story. "They didn't want you. We gave you a better life. Be grateful." She was just a child, and children believe the voices that raise them. That lie buried itself deep in her heart, shaping the way she saw herself. She grew up believing she had been unwanted from the start, and so, while her real family in England never stopped searching, Susan grew into adulthood in Australia and New Zealand, carrying the weight of an identity built on deception. From the outside, her life looked normal. She went to school, played with friends, learned the accent of her new country. But inside, there were always shadows. No birth certificate she could see, no photographs of her early childhood, no grandparents or cousins to connect with, only silence. The couple who had taken her controlled every part of her world. They told her who she was, where she belonged, and who she should never try to contact. By the time she was a teenager, the questions had hardened into resignation. This was her life now. Asking for more only brought pain. She pushed down the ache, left school, got a job, and tried to move on, but the cracks kept showing. Every time she needed paperwork, a form, an application, anything official, something felt wrong. She was told not to worry, that it was being taken care of, but she never saw the documents herself. Then, at 16, everything changed. Living in New Zealand, she needed a passport to return to Australia. As a minor, parental consent and official proof of identity were required. But when she asked the couple she'd always called Mum and Dad for the paperwork, hesitation and excuses spilled out. They couldn't produce what was needed. Officials began asking questions, and slowly the truth surfaced. Susan was not their daughter. She had not been adopted. She had been stolen. That revelation shattered her world. For years, she had carried the weight of rejection, believing her real parents had abandoned her. Now she realized the opposite was true. She had been wanted all along, so wanted that her family had searched for her for decades. But the knowledge didn't bring instant healing. Instead, it left her adrift, with no clear sense of where she belonged. Still, Susan built a life for herself. She grew older, fell in love, and eventually married. With her husband, she created a home and raised children of her own. For the first time, she felt grounded, rooted in a family that was truly hers. But motherhood brought new questions. Who shared her smile? What medical history ran through her veins? Why couldn't she answer even the simplest questions about her ancestry? Every government form, every official ID triggered something deeper, an anxiety she couldn't explain, as if she was guarding something she didn't even understand. Years passed. The questions remained. Susan learned to bury them, but they never left. And then, decades later, fate intervened. Her husband deceased, dead to try one simple thing. He posted a message on a Pontefract community Facebook page, the town in England where Susan had been born. He asked if anyone remembered a little girl who had vanished more than half a century earlier. The response came within minutes. People did remember. They remembered the shock, the grief, the unanswered questions, and they remembered the family who would never stop searching. Within an hour, the threads of time began to weave back together. Contact was made, messages were exchanged, and suddenly, Susan was on a path home, a path she had never dared imagine could exist. When she finally arrived at the airport in England, her heart pounded with fear and anticipation. She stepped into a world she had lost, faces blurring before her eyes until two siblings stood forward. In their trembling hands was a faded photograph of a little girl in pigtails, the sister they had loved and lost so many years ago. Susan froze, as if the decades between them had vanished in an instant. Then tears flowed. They didn't just hug, they clung to one another, as if to make up for every birthday, every Christmas, every ordinary day stolen from them. In that embrace, 53 years of separation melted away. They talked for hours, about the mother Susan could barely remember, the birthdays she had missed, the endless search her siblings had waged. There was grief, yes, anger at the cruelty of it all. But above all else, there was love. A love that had endured distance, deception, and time itself. Susan couldn't get back her childhood. She couldn't reclaim the years stolen from her or the mother who had died believing she would never know what had happened to her daughter. But she had found something even rarer, a family that had never given up on her, a place she could finally call home. Her story is a reminder that truth can be buried for decades, but it cannot be destroyed. That even across oceans, across half a century, the bonds of family endure. And that sometimes a simple question, "Where were you born?" is all it takes to bring a lost child home.